Financial and high-profile social media support from the United States is helping to fuel the ongoing protests and blockades here in Canada. For a look now at the financial and political implications, we are turning to Washington, and the Globe and Mail's Adrian Morrow is joining us from there this morning. Hello.
Hello.
We know that U.S. President Joe Biden called the Prime Minister on Friday, told him U.S. factories have now been forced to shut down because of these blockades. Talk to me about the financial implications being felt south of the border.
Yeah, I mean, the economy is so integrated between the two countries that, you had, food shipments, going back and forth that either, weren't getting through or were being, delayed because they had to divert to other border crossings. You basically have, these manufacturing chains, particularly in the auto sector, where, a single car, basically the parts have to go back and forth across the border as different components are made in different places. And so you had factories that literally shut down, basically sent people home, cut shifts. People were missing out on paychecks and hours that they could have been working because the auto parts couldn't get through, and so they couldn't make cars. And so that sort of economic pain was, it sort of felt no matter which border crossing is shut down, but especially when the Ambassador Bridge was closed, it really was sort of felt around the kind of industrial, heartland around the Great Lakes, where factories on both sides of the border were basically being idled because they couldn't get the components through that they needed to make cars and do other manufacturing.
Adrian, it's been interesting to watch and read the U.S. coverage of the protests and the blockades, whereas we've sort of kept them as isolated incidents. They will describe it as, occupation of the nation's capital and blockades that are shutting down trade across the country. You mentioned that there's other blockades happening. We know there's one in BC at Pacific Highway, Coots in Alberta, Emerson, Manitoba. Those are still blocked. What are the political ramifications if Canada can't keep these borders clear?
Yeah, I think anytime a company is trying to make decisions about where they're going to, put production or how they're going to, manage their supply lines, this is something that they're going to have to factor in. And I think, it's the sort of thing that's going to get probably increasingly frustrating for the U.S. administration. I mean, it is sort of notable that the only one of these blockades that's been cleared, was the one at the Ambassador Bridge. Mm-hmm. And the Canadians only acted, once they basically had the Americans kind of, breathing down their necks. And you
took
had,
a call from the president.
I took a call from the president to the prime minister, basically saying, look, use your, and the White House was saying to a bunch of people, including me, was, that they basically told Ottawa, use your federal powers, that there's been this whole sort of, jurisdictional thing in Canada where everybody's kind of pointing fingers at each other and saying, oh, it's a local issue, someone else should be, this border crossing is a local issue for the local police to solve, or the provinces will put it on the federal government or that sort of thing, and you finally kind of had the U.S. government step in and say, no, you have to solve this, and it doesn't matter how it gets done. Instead of everybody sort of pointing fingers at somebody else, somebody has to just step in and actually make the problem go away. And and that happened at the Ambassador Bridge, but it so far hasn't happened kind of anywhere else.
Really quickly, Adrian, I want to talk about these fundraising efforts by the convoy. They've received a lot of donations, we know, from the U.S. in the millions of dollars. When Ottawa's emergency lines were jammed up last week, police say most of those calls came from the United States. Why does this protest have so much American support?
I think because, a lot of the sort of, anti-vax sentiment that we're seeing in Canada, it is sort of a bleed over, a copycat from the U.S. I mean, you've seen, I think people are carrying the Confederate flag on Parliament Hill a couple of weeks ago during the first sort of, convoy anti-vax protest there, and so, a lot of these sort of Canadian people are copying stuff that they're seeing south of the border. And so, maybe it's not surprising that, people south of the border who share those views are sort of cheering them on. They kind of like seeing their message, being kind of picked up by these Canadian, far-right protesters.
Adrian Morrow joining us from Washington with the Americans' perspective on what's happening. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this, be sure to subscribe here, or you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.